So the White House is in total damage control today as Trump canceled trade talks with Canada. There's also rumors and stories out there that the EU is planning a new trade bloc without the USA. And effectively, everyone is like, man, I can't do business with the USA and Trump. They're too unstable. This is what Trump has to say to defend himself, and it's fascinating.
People, and I don't want them affecting U.S. companies. I don't want that. If anybody's going to affect a U.S. company, I want it to be us. And if they're going to have to pay a penalty or a fine, let it be to us. So they've done this for a long time, for years, but they're very nasty. The European Union's very nasty, there's no question, but they'll learn not to be so nasty very soon.
So effectively, I guess, if Trump doesn't like you, you're very, very nasty. Just to let you guys know, in EU and Canada, you're just nasty, nasty, nasty people, that's according to Trump. But these were the headlines today. Trump says he's terminating all trade discussions with Canada. You got this: EU leaders try to outbully Trump, floating a World Trade Club without the USA. And then you have this, which I talked before in a prior video, that Trump is essentially representing oil companies for their interests. And in today's discussion, he's representing big tech. Now, this is important because the argument right now with Canada is, hey, Canada, why are you trying to tax American companies?
You have a business. You set up a Cudlow hamburger store in Canada, and you've got chains across the U.S. that when you make money in Canada, of course, Canada can tax it. The idea is that what happens if there's somebody just has a website in the U.S. and somebody buys a service in the U.S. and all the income is in the U.S., Canada's saying that they get to tax that. And France is saying that too.
And France is saying that too. So they're playing some word games here, and I want you guys to try to cut through this and understand what's going on. First, Hassett, that is one of Trump's dudes. He may or may not be the next Fed chair. So unfortunately, you may not see the end of him. He's going to be on TV quite a lot. And I just want to pose this question to you. Do you consider a website a business? And I think that's sort of what this rests on, right? Certainly, we're in a new digital economy. And Hassett was using the example of the burger stand. If I open a burger stand in Canada or wherever, you're going to pay local taxes. But if I have a website in another place, gee, why would I pay taxes for having a website? My company's actually in USA. It's just a website in another country. Like, it's kind of a ridiculous, not kind of, it is a ridiculous argument. And so this is sort of what we're getting at here, is when we think about how big tech, be it Google, be it Facebook, Microsoft, Netflix, any number of these American companies operating, around the world, countries have a right to tax them. So Canada's like, hey, I think the rate right now, they're saying 3%, effective Monday, but it's also going to be a retroactive tax. And so big tech companies are going to be on the hook. We're talking about billions of dollars here. So obviously tech companies aren't going to like that. Obviously Wall Street won't like that either. But the fundamental argument that Hassett and them are saying, though, is that, oh, it's just a website in another country. It's not really a business.
And the digital service tax is an extraterritorial, really almost criminal act, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're taxing American companies who don't necessarily even have a presence in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it's a 3% of revenue tax, not profits, revenue. And so it just doesn't make sense that they could do that. The only reason it doesn't violate our tax treaty with Canada is they're claiming it's not an income tax. It's a revenue tax. I mean, you can imagine how preposterous this is.
That is preposterous.
And we spoke, but anyway.
Again, this all rests on whether or not you believe a website is a business entity in a country. This has also been and this also gets to a sort of fundamental issue with how American companies do business, or just our tax system as a whole. Oftentimes, American companies have tax shelters in other places, be it in the Caymans, be it in Ireland, which is a big place where they go. And what happens is, and why this matters to just regular people, if you're curious, when big tech companies say set up shop in the USA, but then tax shelter elsewhere, that means they're not paying taxes in USA to contribute to the overall society. Now, Republicans would make the case of, wow, we shouldn't tax companies because you're, stifling our innovation, and CEOs and big tech companies and, whatever big companies shouldn't pay taxes because they create jobs and all trickle down economics, etc. I disagree. I think if we had more fair tax of businesses in the USA and we eliminated these sort of tax shelters, then that would help local infrastructures, right? So if a company is in a community, their tax dollars help to basically your everyday life. And right now, if you guys have been following the situation in USA, many cities are struggling because they don't have enough tax revenue. So yes, this is all about money, and it depends on your point of view on taxes, whether or not companies should pay higher or lower taxes, or whether or not we should consider websites, entities.
Canada put a charge on some of our companies, and Canada's been a very difficult country to deal with over the years. We hear Canada, we have a great relationship with the people of Canada, but it's been very difficult. And they put a charge, and they were a little bit early, we found out about it. So, and we have all the cards. We have every single one. We don't want to do anything bad, but they have, economically, we have such power over Canada. I'd rather not use it, but they did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. They copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either. And it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. And so I said, we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act. Okay?
Is there anything Canada can do to change your mind about this situation?
Well, no, they put a tax on companies that were American companies that they shouldn't, a very severe tax. And yeah, I guess they could remove it. They will, but it doesn't matter to me.
So according to Trump, Trump thinks that they have all the cards and that Canada's got nothing and no power. But I will, put this out there. I wonder if Canada is going to be literally cutting power to the USA. I mean, actual electricity kind of stuff that's been floated on the table, or, putting high tariffs on Tesla, these kind of things. We'll see. In my opinion, Canada, US, and Mexico are strong trading partners. And effectively what Trump is trying to do is trying to figure out ways to, grift the system and get money into his pocket. Because if you hear his talk through this whole thing, he's just like, oh, why should other countries tax us? If we're going to have any sort of taxes, it should go into my pocket. And that's what effectively this is all about.
Let's start right there. What happened with Canada?
Well, we knew it was coming. We hoped they wouldn't do it. Canada has this digital services tax, and several other countries do too. We disagree, and we think that they discriminate against U.S. companies. But what Canada did here, as of Monday, they're going to implement a retroactive tax. And we think that we don't like the taxes, and obviously we think it's patently unfair to do it retroactive. This was something from the Trudeau years, so we were hoping as a sign of goodwill that the new Carney administration would at least put a break on that during the trade talks. They seem not to have. President
So I don't
Trump
even know if Carney would even have the power to do that, because this is my understanding of it. This would be a thing that would be passed through Parliament in Canada, and it's not like, Carney can just come in and say, okay, I'm just going to make everything that I want it to be. That's how Trump does business, but I don't think Carney works in that way. I do want to hear from Canadians on this one, though. And this is, again, an interesting question. How do you consider a website? Is it an entity or not? They also will talk about this as they're going to be opening, this would be USA, they say a 301 investigation. I had to look this one up. We don't talk about this that often. So what this is, it says it allows a U.S. trade representative, USTR, so this would be Greer, if you guys have been following the channel, you know who that guy is, to investigate and take action against foreign countries that engage in unfair trade practices that burden or restrict U.S. commerce. So that's why Trump likes to say that people are being unfair, these kind of things, because you're trying to use, those kind of arguments. Or they'll always talk about your fentanyl stuff because they're trying to make the case that Trump can do whatever he wants with tariffs because this is a national emergency kind of thing. So they're very particular in their language, and they're all scripted that way too.
Yield, would that be broad-based, looking at Canada and the possibility of tariffs, or very targeted on certain industries?
Well, no, the president can impose tariffs based on IEPA, which is an Emergency Economic Powers Act. The 301 is more durable and could last longer.
The IEPA thing, that's you have to claim that there's an emergency and I have to raise tariffs. That's the claim. And that will probably likely go to the Supreme Court.
So in terms of 301 being more durable and lasting longer, would this be more broad-based, looking across trade of goods and services with Canada more broadly, or would it be more targeted to certain industries?
Right. And I don't think the USA is going to fast track. That's what the headlines were this past week. They've already been at appeals courts. I think Trump's had a couple rulings against him on this thing. But again, I think it's likely going to go to the Supreme Court. This is a fight, and then chances are, if other countries know that Trump's whole power is being questioned, chances are they're better off just kind of waiting around to see sort of how that resolves first before making any drastic moves.
No, it would be targeted across tariffs on Canadian products. And, again, we'll have to see. We know the amount. I think it's about $2 billion of retroactive digital taxes, which seem patently unfair. We had been talking to the administration in Ottawa.
Like I was saying, it's actually pretty big numbers, right? So we're talking about billions of dollars here. But I do think the EU is probably going to move on without the USA.
The European Union is doing something very similar in terms of a digital services tax. How is that factoring into negotiations there?
Oh, well, no, that's not right. The European Union does not have a digital service tax. Several countries within the European Union have digital service taxes. None of them have done those retroactively.
It's not just Canada, it's also the EU. And if you want to talk about the stock market, it's very tech heavy, right? And every day that there's headlines regarding the relationship between American tech companies and the EU. Basically, they have more regulations and laws in Europe than they do in the US. I can't speak to Canada if Canada has the same sort of stuff, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do. And sort of from the Trump point of view, they're worried that Canada is sort of more going, in line with EU and say EU's new trading bloc, opposed to just following and doing whatever USA wants them to do. So, for example, this is a headline here: Apple and Meta could face daily EU fines starting next week. This is something that Elon Musk would be concerned about as well. How is Twitter regulated in the EU? Or you have this kind of stuff. This would be Wall Street Journal here. Apple reworks the European App Store policy to swerve more EU fines. There's always concerns about monopoly issues with the big tech companies, right? The American ones. How they're dealing with, content, your data, your privacy, these kind of things. Like I said, in my opinion, I think it's obvious that these big tech companies are legitimate companies. And, even though you may not, just to say theoretically, don't have a physical presence in a country, but you do have a website, it doesn't mean you don't have a business there. So, this is sort of the same way that, for example, today, Gavin Newsom sued Fox News. Fox News is incorporated in Delaware, so you sue in Delaware. You wouldn't have, say, Fox News' headquarters is in New York, but maybe they could have one office Delaware or whatever. For Americans, I guess when Americans think about the tax policies, and I can't speak to other countries in Europe, etc. But chances are American system is really different than other places. Is that American companies and people, sort of game the system all the time, right? Be it, you file your taxes in different states or cities or countries, etc. And if you guys understand the American system, you know exactly what I'm talking about, just basically the tax shelter stuff. These sort of loopholes is a big problem that I think has been running for years, to where, again, if you're wealthy and powerful, you game the system. On top of that, when you're promoting this, Besant or Hassett or Trump's to the top of the, food chain, essentially, and they're going to be setting the policies, this sort of unfair and unequal system will stay in place. And in my opinion, I'll give you some examples. Let's say a company like Amazon, and this is a good example because, they can certainly create jobs in USA, totally true. But how do they do it? So oftentimes a city will offer Amazon, hey, come to our city. We'll give you lots and lots of tax breaks. So then Amazon moves in, they take up a bunch of real estate. Yes, people do have jobs. But if the tax breaks are huge, where Amazon, doesn't say pay tax at local city, then the city itself is losing revenue from taxes, where they could have, taxed another company or whatever that could go to local fire, police, schools, etc. Right? And this is the question I pose to you then: when a company sets up shop in a local community, yes, it's true they do provide jobs, but we got to do this in a way that is sustainable and also looks out for everyone in the community. Because in this situation, say the Amazon one, if you go by the American system with the full-fledged Trump stuff, then people would have, low wages, no minimum wage, these kind of things, don't pay your workers very much, and don't have any benefits, and don't have any public services, and then CEO pay would skyrocket, and Wall Street profits, I guess, are fantastic, but we're just looking for a balanced system here. And then regulations are also good to, help the environment and help, you know, your data, these kind of things. So there's a lot to unpack with this stuff. I just covered as you know, briefly what I can. And that's what's up. So want to hear your thoughts about what you think about the Canada EU stuff. What do you think about the stuff Trump is saying? And do you feel nasty in Canada and in the UK and the EU? So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.